If you saw my video last night, I fell upon Restoring America's Promise, which was written by the Heritage Foundation, and it is a list of prioritized policies as we move from 2025 into 2026. Now, these are listed out, and each one has its own landing page. I encourage you to go look at it for yourself. But this is the beginning of a series where we're going to talk about each of these policies and really do a deep dive so we understand what we are facing. And the series is just going to go down the list. And the first policy that they have listed is countering the CCP. The Heritage Foundation claims that the Chinese Communist Party is the most persistent and consequential foreign threat facing the American people today. And as you unfold the text on this landing page, you see that they are claiming that the CCP is building a military to challenge the US, stealing American technology at unprecedented rates, and hurting US workers with predatory economic policies. And therefore, they argue that the United States is falling behind in what they are calling a new Cold War. And if you go to the Heritage Foundation's website and you search New Cold War or China, you keep seeing this repeated rhetoric. But why? In order to understand the implications of what this means for our future, we have to look at the past. Let's go back to the original Cold War, which is just the Cold War. And what this was a cold conflict, meaning there was no physical combat between 1947 and 1991. So this ran for decades. And it sort of emerged after World War II, where we saw these two major global superpowers. You had the United States of America, and then you had the Soviet Union, which is now present day Russia. On one side, you had the United States, a capitalist democracy, and on the other, you had the Soviet Union, who were authoritarian communists. But like I said, it wasn't a military combat type of war. What it was proxy wars, it was an arms race, it was competing ideologies, and it was economic warfare. And this was the equivalent of mom and dad getting divorced because nations fell in line with one or the other. This is literally how NATO was born, how we are supposed to have this group of allies behind us, which is questionable now that Donald Trump is in charge. This left both citizens of the United States and citizens of the Soviet Union in complete anxiety and distrust because no one really knew if/when this would no longer be a Cold War. So when the Heritage Foundation couples this new Cold War with other phrasing like ensuring our military is prepared to meet any threats China may pose in the future, people get right back into that mindset of war might be imminent and it might not stay cold. Simply put, framing China as public enemy number one to the United States makes physical war, physical combat, more likely, not less. And when the federal government frames China as this big, massive enemy that must be countered or all hell will break loose, then they are not held to the fire in terms of what is going on here on the home front. They don't have to be as responsible for things like healthcare and food insecurity and climate change and regulations on AI, etc. Those everyday issues impacting everyday Americans completely go to the wayside. And not only do they go to the wayside, they become increasingly worse. We are a major trading partner with China and vice versa. So if you cut off these trading partnerships, if you redirect supply chains, if you have to make major shifts economically, then the people in the United States are going to pay the price, quite literally. Things like phones, food, clothing, electronics, etc. All imports from China become astronomical in their prices, and we are talking much greater than the prices that have been inflated because of tariffs. And this is a great way for authoritarians to take power. Because why? Because Americans across the political spectrum look at China as this shared enemy, and they look at the economic issues as that being a result of that shared enemy. And all we've talked about is the economic environment at home. What something like this also does is increase violence, discrimination, hate, etc. against Asian Americans as a whole. While China clearly has its own issues, which is a separate video, the idea that we need to prioritize countering the CCP is not real. It's just not real. Instead, it pushes forward an agenda that is based on fear, military spending, hate, and a distraction from what is going on at home.